We're here at Calabogie Motorsports Park with the Polaris RZR Turbo S because today I want to run that thing on the dyno to figure out how much horsepower it's got. It's rated at 168 horsepower on the crank, but that's not quite the same as the amount of power it's put into the road. So we're going to run it on the dyno here at Tooth Autosport in just a minute. I'm looking forward to this because I'm super curious as to what it's got for power. All right, so we're here at Tooth Autosport at Calabogie Motorsports Park, and we're with their dyno division, BR Tuning. This is Brett Roger, and he's the one that's going to be running our Polaris on the dyno. Now, Brett, tell me a little bit about your dyno, because there's differences between dynos, right?
Sure, yes. So this is a Dyno Dynamics. It's a braked eddy current dyno that will load versus a normal inertia dyno that won't. Generally, you'll see a little bit of a less horsepower number on here compared to an inertia dyno. Isn't one that's more or less accurate than the other. It's just how the different brands do math.
Yeah, I mean, the dyno's really a tool.
Yes.
It's a good way to know that if you've made a performance improvement to your vehicle, whether or not it's made that improvement and by how much.
Yep.
But also, it's a good thing to start even before you start tuning, to know where your baseline is and be able to build from there.
Yeah, I tell all of my customers it's all about the delta. So it's about the before and after. You always want to do your best to get a baseline run in before you do any modifications, and then you kind of do your, all your tuning,
work
and
from there.
You do parts installs, and then you kind of know, yes, this is where I started and this is where I wound up, and whether that's high or low compared to what the internet says, it doesn't really matter.
No.
50 horsepower is 50 horsepower.
And different dynos are different dynos.
Exactly.
It could be air density, it could be altitude. There's all these different.
It's apples to oranges.
Yeah.
Sure.
So if you see a big number out there somewhere on the internet, and then you run your car, or in our case UTV, on the dyno, and it's not the same, you don't necessarily have to be disappointed about that.
No.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of what we're going to run, it's the Turbo S, and it's bone stock. I mean, what like 85 kilometer miles on this thing right now?
58 miles on it?
Yeah, so it's brand new, it's as stock as you can get on this dyno. I really don't know what we're going to see. 168 horsepower on the crank, but the CVT system is also pretty parasitic with its loss.
CVT, big wheels and tires. We're not running this in four-wheel drive mode, so it won't see two diffs, but that's something to take into consideration as well.
I'm kind of expecting to see about a 40 horse hit for power on the ground compared to what it's on the crank, just to run the system. So
yeah, generally speaking, it's like 20 to 25% drivetrain loss, so it's rated at 160. Quarter of that is 40, so that's probably bang on.
Yeah, so let's run it and see what we got. You're in high, eh?
Yeah.
So we completed the dyno run with the Turbo S, and the numbers weren't quite as much as I thought. Looking at internet and other videos out there, I did see bigger horsepower numbers floating around, but again, different dynos, different days, different machine. I'm not necessarily disappointed. And Brent, what did we get here?
So we got a peak of 110 horsepower at the wheels, which is probably bang on for what it is, given that it's a completely stock vehicle. As we talked about before we did all this, the drivetrain loss, the tire loss on the rollers, and just the sheer size of these wheels. I do a lot of car stuff, but I also do a fair amount of truck stuff too.
Yeah.
And you can have kind of the same powertrain in a truck as you do in a car, and you'll definitely see a big drivetrain loss just driving bigger wheels and tires.
Moving these meats.
Exactly. It's huge. It's a lot more than most people would anticipate.
And these numbers at 110 to the ground, I mean, we talked about it before off camera, but this dyno could see maybe a 15-20% you know, variants and other readings out there. So you add that, and we're right in the ballpark of what else is out there.
This machine definitely reads on the low side compared to most other stuff that's out on the market. So yeah, I mean, anywhere between a 10 to 20% spread higher would be kind of what I would expect to see if this was just to go another dyno with no other changes at all. Yeah. So other vehicles that you've had on this dyno, what else do you have that you put through that's in that 110 to maybe we'll give it a little bit of variance, 120 wheel horsepower? What else has been on the dyno that's got that kind of power? I've got a car in mind. Mazda Miatas.
Mazda Miatas.
Yes.
So they're about the same power to the ground as this. Maybe a little bit more?
They are maybe slightly more depending on what particular year that you're running.
Yeah.
And what obviously trim level, you know, like how modified, how stock it is.
Yeah.
I mean, our spec series here, we kind of try and keep everything in that 110 to 115 range.
Yeah.
Just to kind of keep it all level. And then it's a driver series rather than a car setup series. But yeah, Mazda Miata, looking at the spec sheet of this and then the spec sheet of a Miata, they are surprisingly similar in power, surprisingly similar in weight, surprisingly similar in size if you park one beside.
Yeah. This is actually bigger.
This is
physically
huge.
It looks bigger.
This is a giant machine, so it is much bigger than a Miata.
And the reason why I'm asking that is because that is what's got my brain turning, because this being comparable on this dyno, the Turbo S on this dyno compared to a Miata on this dyno is roughly the same rear wheel horsepower.
Yeah.
So that means potentially they could race one another.
There are, yes.
I think
you could do that.
Nobody's ever asked that question before. Can a RZR race a Miata? But we're here at Calabogie Motorsports Park.
We should answer the question that no one has asked.
There is a track right out that door.
It is 200 feet that way.
And there's Mazda Miata, spec Miatas just outside that door too. So
we have them prepped and ready to go.
I think we're going to do that. So we're going to answer the question that nobody asked, and we're going to race this thing against a Miata on a road course. But that is going to be in another video.